All right. So today we are going to dive into a book that has honestly got me thinking differently about life's ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
It's called How to Be a Stoic by Massimo Pigliucci.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a practical guide
Yeah.
to, using this ancient philosophy to handle all the stress and the craziness that we deal with in modern life.
Right, right.
And before we get too far, if you guys are finding this deep dive helpful so far, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more book breakdowns like this.
Absolutely.
So, what I think is really cool about this book is
Yeah.
Pigliucci, he doesn't just talk the talk.
Yeah.
He walks the walk, too.
Yeah.
He's a scientist and a philosopher who actually uses these Stoic principles in his own life.
Yeah, that's what's really intriguing about this book. He's not just some professor lecturing us on Stoicism. He's actually lived it.
Right, and I think that makes a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely.
It's one thing to, read about philosophy,
Yeah.
but it's another to see it actually lived out,
Yeah. Yeah.
So for those of us who might not be totally familiar with it, what exactly is Stoicism?
So Stoicism at its core, it's a practical philosophy that's really focused on living a good life.
Okay.
And it's all about focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, reactions, and then letting go of what you can't.
Okay.
So it's not about being emotionless,
Right.
but it's about managing your reactions and your perspectives on things.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I can already see, in today's world, it feels like there's just so much that's outside of our control.
Oh, yeah.
So, how do you actually do that,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Pigliucci really breaks it down in the book.
Okay.
And he delves into these 4 cardinal virtues of Stoicism,
Okay.
which are wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
All right, so let's break those down a little bit because wisdom seems pretty straightforward, but is it more than just, being smart?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just about book smarts.
Okay.
It's about using knowledge for good judgment and living a virtuous life.
Okay.
It's the application of knowledge, not just the accumulation of it.
Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. So it's more like practical wisdom than just being like a walking encyclopedia.
Exactly. And then you've got justice,
Okay.
which the Stoics, they believed is about treating everyone fairly and recognizing our interconnectedness. We're all part of this, human experience, and our actions impact each other.
Yeah, so rather than just looking out for number one all the time, it's more about the common good.
Exactly.
Okay, what about courage? In fact, that's a virtue that can be really easily misunderstood.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
What does that actually mean in Stoicism?
So it's not just about physical bravery.
Okay.
It's about facing your fears and doing what's right, even when it's hard.
Right.
Pigliucci actually uses this example of Admiral James Stockdale,
Oh, wow.
who survived years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam.
Oh, my gosh.
And he credits Stoicism with giving him the mental strength to endure all those hardships.
Wow. Talk about a real-world application to these principles.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the last one, temperance.
Yes.
Is that about, moderation, not overdoing it?
It is. It is.
Okay.
It's about moderation, self-control,
Okay.
finding balance in all areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
The Stoics believe that giving in to extreme emotions or desires
Right.
could lead to unhappiness and poor choices.
So it's finding that sweet spot, not going to extremes in anything.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
And now, tying all these virtues together is this Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control,
Yep, got it.
which basically helps us figure out what we can and cannot control.
Okay.
And he uses this great analogy of a dog that's tied to a cart. So if the dog fights against the cart's movement, it's just going to end up miserable.
Yeah.
But if it accepts the situation and walks alongside, it actually finds this kind of freedom within those limits.
Wow, that's a really great picture, I think.
Yeah.
It's not about being passive.
Yeah,
It's about understanding where your power lies and then acting accordingly.
exactly. Yeah.
And if you guys are enjoying this breakdown of these Stoic principles so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more insightful book summaries from us.
Absolutely.
So Pigliucci, he doesn't just talk about these concepts, abstractly.
Yeah.
He weaves in all these really fascinating stories that just kind of make Stoicism come alive.
Right.
And one that he talks about is Epictetus,
Yeah.
who began his life as a slave, but actually became a really well-known philosopher.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so inspiring to see how these figures applied Stoicism in their own lives.
Mm.
So, I mean, Epictetus, he didn't let these really difficult circumstances, get him down.
Not at all.
How did he use those experiences?
Well, he used them as fuel,
Oh,
to cultivate his inner strength and pursue wisdom.
oh,
His story is like a testament to, Stoic resilience and this power of focusing on what you can control, even when life throws you a curveball.
that is a good point.
Yeah.
Because I think we often let those external circumstances just dictate our happiness.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think there's a big lesson there
Yeah, big time.
for all of us.
Yeah. Welcome back.
Oh, hey!
I'm so excited to continue our deep dive into how to be a Stoic.
No, me too. I feel like we laid some good groundwork in part one.
Yeah.
But there's still so much to explore.
Oh, absolutely.
In part one, we were talking about how Pigliucci, he weaves in these personal stories to really illustrate the Stoic principles.
Right.
What are some of the other stories or examples that really stood out to you?
So one that's really powerful is this story of Larry Becker,
Oh,
who's a philosophy professor who contracted polio as a teenager
oh, wow.
and faced these incredible physical challenges.
Yeah.
But instead of succumbing to despair,
Right.
he used Stoic principles to navigate his difficulties.
That's so incredible. He didn't let those circumstances define him.
Yeah.
What was his secret?
Well, he talks about learning to accept his limitations and focusing on what he could control,
Okay.
which was his attitude, his mindset, his choices.
Okay.
He even developed this set of 5 strategies for dealing with these challenges.
Oh, wow.
And they're all based on Stoic principles.
So what kind of strategies are we talking about here?
So he calls them keeping
Yeah.
perspective, developing a life plan, striving for internal harmony,
Okay.
being wary of brick walls,
or
and recognizing when to quit.
oh.
And just so you know,
Yeah.
brick walls is a metaphor.
Okay, good. Good to know. Good to
Yeah.
know. So I'm sensing a theme here about, recognizing those obstacles, whether
Yeah.
they're real or perceived,
Yeah,
and then figuring out how to overcome them. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
exactly.
Yep.
So Becker's advice is to first determine if it's an actual brick wall or just a mental barrier you've created for yourself.
Okay.
Because a real one requires, finding a way around or maybe even changing directions.
Right, right.
But if it's just in our heads, then we can, push through it.
Okay, that's a really helpful distinction.
Yeah.
What about this developing a life plan strategy?
Yeah.
Does that mean that, we need to have our whole lives, meticulously planned out?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's more about just having a sense of direction,
Okay.
knowing what's important to you
Right.
and making choices that are aligned with your values.
Okay.
But it's not about being rigid. Flexibility and adaptation are key because life rarely goes exactly as planned.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like having a roadmap, but being open to, detours along the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
One thing that really resonated with me from the book was the Stoic perspective on insults and criticism.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's particularly relevant these days
Absolutely.
with all the online negativity,
Sure.
So how do the Stoics suggest, approaching that kind of stuff?
So they had this very practical approach.
Okay.
They believed that if someone insults you, it's their problem, not yours.
Okay.
You can choose to ignore it or respond with humor,
Right.
but just don't let it steal your inner peace.
I remember Pigliucci quoting Epictetus on this.
Yeah.
He said, if you learn that someone is speaking ill of you, don't try to defend yourself against the rumors. Respond instead with, yes, and he doesn't know the half of it, because he could have said more.
Oh, yeah, that's classic Stoic response right there.
Yeah.
By not taking the insult personally, you maintain your equilibrium and you kind of disarm the attacker.
Right.
Pigliucci even shares this anecdote about his friend, Bill Irvine,
Okay.
who's a modern Stoic, and he calls this insult pacifism.
Insult pacifism.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me about this anecdote.
So Irvine, he recounts this time when a colleague told him,
Okay.
I can't decide if what you wrote is just misguided or downright evil.
Oh, wow.
Ouch, right?
Yeah.
So being the Stoic that he is,
Yeah.
Irvine just replies, well, good thing you haven't read my other works or you'd see just how evil and misguided I really am.
Oh, he's turning it around.
He's totally diffusing the situation with humor.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And it highlights this Stoic principle that,
Yeah.
while we can't control what others say or do, we can control our reactions.
Right.
And sometimes a little humor can go a long way in preserving our peace of mind.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of like challenging situations,
Yeah.
how does Stoicism approach dealing with like grief and loss, which is, something that unfortunately we all experience at some point.
Right. And it's an important topic. And the Stoics,
Yeah.
they had a very nuanced perspective on this. They recognized that grief is a natural human emotion.
Right.
But they also believed that we have a choice in how we respond to it.
Okay.
So they encouraged acknowledging the pain without letting it consume us.
So not suppressing the grief, but also not letting it take over.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And they really emphasized focusing on, the good times shared with loved ones and living our own lives well, even in their absence, as a way of honoring their memory by continuing to live a life they would be proud of.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's about finding a way to move forward without forgetting those who are gone.
Exactly.
Okay.
Pigliucci also discusses this idea of premeditatio malorum.
Okay, which means premeditation of evils.
Premeditation of evils.
Yeah.
That sounds a little intense.
I know, right? The names, that sounds a bit daunting.
Yeah.
But it's really about mental preparation and building resilience.
Oh, okay.
It involves like mentally rehearsing for potential setbacks or challenges.
Okay, so it's like a mental fire drill.
Exactly.
For tough situations.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. The Stoics believed that by contemplating worst-case scenarios, we could actually reduce anxiety and fear.
Oh,
Because if you've already thought through how you'd handle a difficult situation,
right.
you're less likely to be caught off guard and overwhelmed when it actually happens.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It's about taking away some of the power of the unknown
exactly.
by mentally preparing ourselves for different possibilities.
Yeah, and it can be applied to all sorts of scenarios, from minor inconveniences like missing a train
Yeah.
to more serious events like job loss or health issues.
The key is to mentally walk through how you'd respond in a calm and rational way.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this premeditation of evils could be useful.
Yeah.
But let's kind of shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We talked about those 4 cardinal virtues earlier.
Yeah.
Are there any other key concepts within Stoicism that really stand out to you?
Definitely.
Okay.
So one that's central to Stoicism is this idea of sympathia.
Sympathia.
Yeah, it's often translated as affinity or interconnectedness.
Okay.
And it's basically this idea that we're all part of this larger web of life,
Okay.
connected to each other and to the cosmos as a whole.
Okay.
So it really emphasizes our shared humanity and responsibility to one another.
So it's not just about like focusing on our individual needs.
Right.
It's recognizing that our actions have ripple effects.
Exactly.
And impact others.
Yeah, and this ties back to that Stoic emphasis on living a virtuous life,
Okay.
not just for your own benefit. Okay.
For the good of all.
Got it.
True happiness, according to the Stoics, comes from living in harmony with nature, with each other,
Okay.
and with our own rational principles.
Wow. Okay. So this is all sounding great in theory, but I'm sure some people listening are like, okay, but how do I actually put this into practice?
Yeah, for sure.
Does Pigliucci give any advice on that?
He does. He offers a lot of really great suggestions.
Yeah.
One of the most important is to just start small.
Okay.
Don't try to change your entire life overnight.
Yeah.
Just pick 1 or 2 Stoic principles that resonate with you and start incorporating them into your daily routine.
Baby steps. Right?
Exactly. Baby steps. Yeah, it can feel overwhelming to like overhaul everything at once.
Right.
So what are some small changes but impactful changes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you could, start a daily journaling practice to reflect on your thoughts and actions. Or try a few minutes of mindfulness each day.
Okay.
Just, simple but consistent steps can make a big difference over time.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works for you and then building, a sustainable practice.
Absolutely.
Pigliucci also talks about role models, right?
He does, yes.
Okay.
He suggests finding a Stoic role model.
Okay.
Someone whose life really exemplifies the virtues you admire.
Okay.
So it could be a historical figure like Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius, or even someone you know personally.
Right. And I can see how studying the lives of these figures could be really inspiring.
Oh, for sure. And it can provide those concrete examples of how to apply Stoicism
Mm.
to real-world challenges.
Right?
He also highlights this importance of community.
Okay.
He
Mm.
encourages finding those like-minded individuals
Okay.
who can support you on your journey.
Yeah, I think having a supportive community can make a big difference,
Absolutely.
especially when things get tough. Yeah, it's like having a team of cheerleaders and coaches who are there to support you when you stumble and celebrate your successes.
I love that. I love that analogy. It really highlights the importance of community.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot about the positive aspects of Stoicism,
Mm.
but Pigliucci also addresses some common criticisms of Stoicism, doesn't he?
He does. He does.
Like, what are some of the things that people might say about Stoicism?
So, one that we hear a lot
Okay.
is that Stoicism is too unemotional,
Okay.
that it encourages people to suppress their feelings and become detached.
Yeah, I think that was one of my initial thoughts too.
Yeah.
Actually, when I first heard about it, I was like, this sounds a little too
Right.
cold.
Yeah, well, he argues that it's a misinterpretation.
Okay.
The Stoics, they weren't advocating for emotional suppression,
Right.
but rather for emotional intelligence.
Okay.
It's about understanding your emotions, managing them wisely, and choosing your response instead of letting your emotions kind of rule you.
So it's not about being a robot. It's about developing a healthier relationship
Exactly.
with your
Something like that.
emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, and that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other criticisms?
So another one is this idea that Stoicism is fatalistic, that it encourages people to passively accept whatever happens without trying to change things.
Okay, but that doesn't really seem to align with the whole idea of focusing on what you can control.
Exactly. And Pigliucci really emphasizes that the Stoics weren't passive.
Okay.
They believed in taking action and trying to make the world a better place.
Right.
But it's about recognizing what you can and cannot control
Mm-hmm.
and then channeling your energy into the things you can influence.
Right.
It's about finding that balance between acceptance and action.
Got it. So it sounds like a very nuanced approach,
Yeah.
requiring both like inner work
Yeah,
and outward action.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we've talked about the criticisms of Stoicism being like unemotional and passive. Yeah. Are there any other like common misconceptions out there?
So one more that he tackles
Yeah, okay.
is this idea that Stoicism is just too difficult,
Okay.
that it sets an unrealistically high standard for human behavior.
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff sounds, it sounds challenging to live out consistently.
Right. Yeah. And he acknowledges that living a Stoic life is a lifelong challenge,
Okay.
one that requires discipline, self-reflection, and a willingness to face your own flaws.
Right.
But he emphasizes that it's a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
You don't have to be a perfect Stoic
Right.
to benefit from this philosophy.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
Because it's about progress, not perfection, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And, he reminds us that even the Stoic philosophers themselves weren't perfect.
Right.
They struggled with their emotions and made mistakes just like everyone else.
Yeah, that makes it a lot more relatable.
Right. And they viewed Stoicism as this ongoing practice, this path to self-improvement that continues throughout life.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's not like you just achieve Stoicism and then you're done.
Yeah, exactly. And he also emphasizes that Stoicism
Yeah.
is not like this rigid set of rules.
Okay.
It's a flexible framework
Okay.
that can be adapted to your individual needs and circumstances.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
It's about taking those core principles and making them your own.
exactly.
Finding what works best for you in your own life.
It's not about blindly following a dogma.
Right.
It's about taking ownership of your philosophy and making it a living, breathing part of who you are.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It sounds like at its core,
Yeah,
Stoicism is about self-discovery and growth.
absolutely. And Pigliucci's book serves as an excellent companion
Yeah.
for that journey.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in part 2 here. Exploring these practical applications of Stoicism, addressing the criticisms, and highlighting, the importance of personalization and community.
Absolutely.
But there's still so much more to uncover in how to be a Stoic.
Oh, yeah.
So stay tuned, because we'll be back with even more Stoic wisdom in part 3.
We will.
And as always, make sure you like and subscribe to Book Summary Podcast for more deep dives into fascinating books like this.
Yes. We'll see you in part 3.
All right, so welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into how to be a Stoic.
Yes.
I'm really excited to keep exploring these powerful ideas with you.
Me too. Me
In
too.
the previous parts, we've talked a lot about, the principles of Stoicism.
Right.
But now I'd love to delve into some specific techniques and exercises
Yeah.
that Pigliucci recommends for actually putting this philosophy into practice.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's one thing to understand the theory,
Right.
but it's another thing to actually apply it in our daily lives.
Yeah.
So what are some of the practical tools that Pigliucci suggests we can use to cultivate a more Stoic mindset?
Well, one of my favorites, which we touched upon earlier,
Yeah.
is the view from above,
Okay.
which is a visualization exercise
Oh,
that involves imagining yourself from a cosmic perspective,
oh.
looking down at the Earth from this vast distance.
I remember you mentioning this.
Yeah.
It sounds like a powerful way to gain perspective.
It really is. By taking this mental step back,
Mm-hmm.
we can see our problems in a new light.
Okay.
And we realize that our individual worries and anxieties
Right.
often seem quite small in the grand scheme of things.
It's like getting a reality check from the universe.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly freeing. It
Yeah.
allows us to detach from our ego,
Mm-hmm.
let go of our need to control everything,
Okay.
and just find this sense of peace in the midst of the chaos that is life.
Yeah, that's definitely a perspective I think we could all benefit from.
Yeah.
Are there any other techniques that Pigliucci recommends?
Yes. So another one, and this one might sound a bit counterintuitive at first,
Okay.
is negative visualization.
Negative visualization.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So it's a technique where you intentionally imagine the loss of things that you value,
Okay.
like your health, your loved ones, or even your possessions.
Okay. I mean, that does sound a little bit morbid.
I know it might seem strange,
Yeah.
but hear me out.
Okay.
So the Stoics believed that by contemplating the possibility of loss,
Okay.
we could actually deepen our appreciation for what we have in the present moment.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like turning a potential negative into a positive
Yeah,
by using it to cultivate gratitude.
exactly.
Ah.
It's a way to savor the good times while they last.
Right.
And to mentally prepare ourselves for the inevitable challenges that life throws our way.
So by facing our fears head on,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, we take away some of their power.
Exactly. And it can also help us to develop this sense of detachment
Okay.
from material possessions and external validation. Because after all, if we can imagine living without something,
Yeah.
then it holds less power over us.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about shifting our priorities from those external things to more internal qualities,
Exactly.
like virtue and character.
Yes. And this ties back to that Stoic concept of preferred indifference that we discussed earlier.
Right.
It's about recognizing that while external things can be enjoyable,
Mm-hmm.
they aren't essential for our happiness.
So negative visualization is a way to put that concept into practice.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So what are some other techniques that Pigliucci suggests?
Well, he also talks about the importance of reflecting on our mortality.
Okay.
Now, this might seem a bit heavy,
Yeah.
but the Stoics saw it as this really powerful tool
Okay.
for clarifying our values
Yep.
and living with greater intention and purpose.
So it's not about dwelling on death in a morbid way,
No.
but rather using it as a reminder to live a more meaningful life.
Exactly. And, by contemplating our own finiteness,
Mm-hmm.
we can gain this clearer understanding of what truly matters.
Right.
And it can help us to let go of trivial worries,
Okay.
to focus on our relationships,
Yeah.
pursue our passions, and to make the most of the time that we have.
So it's about living each day with this sense of urgency
Mhm.
and purpose, knowing that our time is limited.
That's the idea, and he even challenges us to ask ourselves this powerful question,
That's good.
which is, what would I regret not doing if I knew I only had a limited time left?
That's a great question.
It is.
It really forces you to examine your priorities.
Yes.
And to make sure you're living in alignment with your values.
It does, and it can be a really powerful motivator
Yeah.
to take action and make changes in our lives.
These Stoic exercises are so thought-provoking. I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah.
Are there any others that you think are particularly helpful?
So he also emphasizes the value of keeping a journal
Okay.
to track our thoughts, emotions, and actions.
Journaling is something that's been recommended for centuries.
Oh, yeah.
And for good reason. It's such a powerful tool for self-reflection.
It is, by writing down our experiences,
Hmm.
we can gain a better understanding of our patterns,
Okay.
identify areas where we can improve,
Yeah.
and just track our progress over time.
Yeah.
It can also help us to process difficult emotions, clarify our thinking, and to develop a more objective perspective on our lives.
It's like having a conversation with yourself on paper, which can
Yes.
sometimes be more insightful than talking to someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it can also be really helpful for identifying those negative thought patterns that we might not even be aware of.
Oh, that's a good point. And that reminds me of like CBT,
Right.
which we discussed earlier.
Yes.
There seem to be a lot of like connections between
Absolutely. Yes.
Stoicism and modern psychology.
There are, and that's one of the reasons why Stoicism is resonating with so many people today. It's this timeless wisdom that's backed up by modern science.
So journaling is a great tool for self-awareness and growth.
Absolutely.
Are there uh, any other practical techniques we should know about?
Of course. So remember that dichotomy of control that we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, he encourages us to make this a regular practice,
Okay.
consciously reminding ourselves to distinguish between what's within our control and
Yeah.
what's outside of our control.
Okay.
And then most importantly, to focus our energy on what we can influence,
Right.
which is primarily our own thoughts, actions, and reactions.
Yeah, it sounds simple in theory,
Yeah.
but I imagine it can be quite challenging.
It does.
With
It
final
takes
practice.
effort and practice,
Yeah, fair.
especially in a world that often encourages us to strive for control
Right.
and to feel responsible for everything.
Yeah.
But the Stoics remind us that much of what happens in life
Mhm.
is simply beyond our control.
So it's about like surrendering to what we can't change.
Yes,
And focusing on what we can.
precisely. And by doing so, we can actually find this greater peace of mind and freedom.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we can't control the universe,
Right.
but we can control how we respond to it.
Yeah. That's a powerful reminder.
Yeah.
And it ties back to that idea of like finding freedom within limits.
Exactly. It's about embracing the present moment and focusing on making wise choices within the constraints of our circumstances.
All right. So we've got negative visualization, reflecting on mortality, journaling, practicing the dichotomy of control.
Mm-hmm.
Any other Stoic tools in our toolbox here?
Well, one that's really important,
Right.
and perhaps the most fundamental of all,
Right.
is cultivating a sense of gratitude.
Yeah. Gratitude is so powerful.
It is.
It can really like shift your perspective,
Mm.
make you appreciate all the good things in your life.
Exactly. And the Stoics believed that gratitude is this key to happiness.
Yeah.
By intentionally focusing on the good things in our lives, even the small things,
Right.
we can cultivate this more positive outlook and appreciate the richness of our experiences.
It's about finding the silver lining, even in difficult situations.
It is. And gratitude isn't just about, feeling good.
Right.
It's also about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things,
Mm-hmm.
appreciating the gifts that we've been given,
Okay.
and acknowledging our dependence on others.
Yeah.
It's a way to cultivate humility, generosity, and a sense of belonging.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're not isolated individuals,
Mm-hmm.
but part of a larger web of life.
Exactly. And that brings us full circle back to the concept of sympathia that we
Yeah.
discussed earlier.
This has been such an insightful exploration of Stoicism and its practical applications.
Yeah.
Are there any final thoughts that you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up this episode?
I think the most important takeaway from all of this
Yeah.
is that Stoicism is not just a philosophy,
Right.
it's a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the set of tools and practices that we can use to navigate life's challenges with greater wisdom, courage, and resilience.
Couldn't agree more.
It's about taking responsibility for our own thoughts, actions, and reactions,
Mm-hmm.
and making conscious choices that align with our values.
I think Pigliucci has done a fantastic job of presenting Stoicism in a way that's both accessible
Yes.
and inspiring.
He has.
He's shown us how these ancient principles can be applied to our modern lives in really meaningful ways.
Absolutely. And I encourage everyone listening
Yeah.
to pick up a copy of How to Be a Stoic
Yeah.
and just see how this philosophy might resonate with you.
Yeah.
You might be surprised at how transformative it can be.
Well said. Well said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Stoicism.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
We hope so.
And if you enjoyed this episode, Don't forget to like and subscribe to Book Summary Podcasts
Yes.
for more deep dives into fascinating books that can help you live a better life.
We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.